Hello everyone and welcome to SCOMathon 2025. Thank you for taking the time to attend my session. It's really a great pleasure and honor to be part of this year's lineup of SCOMathon presenters, and I truly hope you will find the topic both engaging and valuable. Today we will dive into a crash course on troubleshooting the key components of System Center Operations Manager. My name is Stoyan Chalakov. I'm a Microsoft MVP, Senior Principal Consultant and Partner at Pon IT Consulting, which is a Swiss-based consulting company specializing in Microsoft technologies. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on nearly every major social media platform. And now, without further ado, let's take a look at what we will be covering in today's session. First of all, let's look at the introduction and the scope of today's session. So why did we choose a topic within the troubleshooting? So the main reason for this is actually the complexity of SCOM. So SCOM is enterprise-grade monitoring tool, which consists of many different components, each with its own complexity, each with its own specifics. So whenever we are talking SCOM, troubleshooting always pops up as a very important topic. And actually the second reason is because of my troubleshooting background. I love doing troubleshooting. It is something I find very interesting. What we need also to mention today is that actually the session we will focus on the operational troubleshooting aspects of SCOM. What I mean by that, if you have or face deployment issues with SCOM, then then you need to know that this will not be covered in today's session, because actually deployment issues are mainly troubleshooted based on installation logs. So this will not be part of today's session. And what is also important to mention is that because of time constraints, we will have to exclude some of the components of SCOM. We simply don't have the time to cover each SCOM component. And actually, the components which we are going to exclude are two major components. First, SQL databases. The reason for this is that most of the customers, they have dedicated database administration teams which are doing the actual troubleshooting for them. And the second reason, again, time constraints. The other component which we are going to leave out of this session are network devices or network device monitoring. And the main reason for this, I think it's not that spread or not that much implemented as the other components of SCOM, or not that interesting whenever we talk SCOM, so we will just leave it out. So let's start with the first one, the SCOM Windows agent. The very first thing I am doing whenever I face an issue with this Windows SCOM agent is to check the Operations Manager event logs. And this is a topic which will pop up with every major SCOM component. So Windows event logs, or especially Operations Manager event logs, are very crucial whenever you do troubleshooting. The second thing I would like to mention in regards to the Windows agent are actually the different views which you might use within the SCOM in order to obtain more information on what is going with your agent. So active alerts view, agent details view, agent performance, and also others might give you helpful information when doing troubleshooting. One solution which I really implement and use in almost every environment I implement or administer is Kevin Holman's SCOM Management MP, which contains a lot of very helpful views, but more important, it contains a lot of different administrative tasks which you might use when doing agent troubleshooting. For example, you can execute PowerShell scripts on your agents. You can export event logs from your agents, and actually many more. I would just encourage you, if you haven't heard of it, just visit the site, or you see the information on the screen, download it and test it out. It's really a great solution. Next, again with regarding the Windows SCOM agent, is actually verbose agent tracing. or ETL tracing or verbose agent logging is something which I also do quite often. What is worth mentioning here is that the log which generates, which is getting generated by the verbose agent logging is pretty complex, and you have to, and it's also very detailed. So you have to have some technical knowledge of how SCOM or the agent operates in order to be able to find out what is exactly going on. Next, we will jump to a very cool, in my opinion, tool, the so-called Workflow Analyzer, which is part of the Microsoft Systems Center Management Pack tools. This tool actually gives you detailed information in regards to the data flow and how the actual workflows within SCOM operate, whether some workflows are failing on your agent, and if you don't know it, just go ahead and test it. Very, very helpful in specific situations. Now let's review some common issues and how to fix them in regards to the Windows agent of SCOM. So what we often have is, and I think everyone knows this, problems with the Windows agent cache of SCOM. So what we do in such cases is pretty clear. We just reinitialize the cache. It's something we do quite often, and it's a very important troubleshooting step. And of course, often we need to ensure that the ports are open, so the agent tool management server communication should be functioning properly. And of course, network connectivity should be there. We also frequently encounter authentication and certificate-based issues. And for that, there are certain tools like, and also scripts, which might help you identify the codes for those. And last but not least, this is an issue which I also have encountered on a couple of occasions, having stale agents in the database. Kevin Holman has a great article on this, on how to approach stale agents and how to remove them. Just Google this and you'll pretty easily find the article of him. So, with every component which we will be covering today, at the end of the troubleshooting information, I will present you a couple of very important and interesting links regarding troubleshooting this component. And because it is of no use when we see the whole link, I'll just present you with the titles. But if you insist on having the links, you can ping me back or contact me, and I'll be glad to provide you those. So in regards to the SCOM Windows agents, there are a couple of Microsoft Learn articles which are very important when doing troubleshooting. You see those on the screen, but also Kevin Holman's blog contains a blog post which is called Fixing Troubled SCOM Agents, which also has great and very, very useful information there. And there is also a very long and detailed guide on how to troubleshoot client agent installation issues in SCOM. The last one is actually a blog article of mine which I wrote a couple of months ago. It contains all the information which we just mentioned. It's very detailed. It's also it also contains links. So if you want to get more information, just visit this blog and you will find it there. So moving next to the SCOM Linux agent. So what is important when doing the troubleshooting or when doing troubleshooting of Linux agents in SCOM? So the first thing what needs to be checked is actually the agent status on the targeted system. This you can do using different commands. You see those on the screen. But also another important part of troubleshooting your Linux agent is checking the logs. And here, with the Linux agent, you can differentiate between the actual agent log files and also the generic system log files, which also might contain useful information in regards to the Linux agent. The next type of troubleshooting is actually troubleshooting of discovery and communication issues. In regards to this, what we can say is that it's critical that your Linux agent has the proper certificate, and not only your Linux agent, but also your management server, because in order for the communication to happen properly, both sides need to have the correct certificate. Of course, ports is a topic also here. There are two very famous ports which need to be open in regards to the Linux agent, and here what is worth mentioning is that the direction in which the port needs to be open is also very important or plays a key role. Of course, ensuring that you have a proper DNS resolution is part of the whole troubleshooting process. And what you can also do is you can use the SCOM discovery wizard, so within the SCOM console, which might not only give you additional error messages, which you can Google or find out what they are all about, but also the discovery wizard will give you guided troubleshooting steps on what to do in case something is failing during discovery. So another type of troubleshooting is troubleshooting of the Linux agent installation and also troubleshooting its configuration. So what needs to be said here is that you always need to ensure that your Linux agent package is compatible with the targeted system that you need to monitor with the Linux distribution. So there are different packages for each distribution and also different packages for each OS version. So you need to ensure that you have the exact version which is suitable for your Linux devices. Of course, this package needs to be verified, or its integrity needs to be verified. And one point which I find very, very important is configuring the proper permissions in regards to your agent, and also the proper permissions for the runas accounts which are used for monitoring your Linux systems. So, dealing with the agent discovery failures, what could be the cause for agent discovery failures? So, first one, incorrect runas credentials. Your runas account have incorrect passwords or you have a typo. And the second one, insufficient permissions. The article we saw previously contains permission sets for each Linux distribution. So what you can do is just open the article, find the exact Linux distribution which you have, and just copy the permission set there. And this will ensure that you have really the correct permissions on your targeted systems. Other type of issues arise because of the network connectivity or blocked ports. And if we jump further, issues with the agent health and configuration, what we can do about it, you can use different commands in order to check the status of your Linux agent. This we already briefly mentioned, but also you can use different commands in order to diagnose problems. Again, if your permissions are not properly set, different problems with the file system and resource monitoring might arise. So this only stresses out how important it is to have the proper permissions set on your monitored Linux system. And a couple of cross-platform management pack tips. Please ensure that you're using the management pack which are exactly intended for your Linux version, because there are different management pack for the different Linux versions. And of course, always ensure that you are using the latest version of the management packs in order to avoid known issues. So this is the last point. And as with the Windows agent, a couple of articles which I find extremely useful. You'll see those on screen. So troubleshooting, like a generic guide on troubleshooting Unix and Linux agents, and also one article which specifically focuses on agent discovery in the Operations Manager. Two more, they're coming from Blake Drum. Blake writes a lot of articles on troubleshooting SCOM, very helpful, very detailed. If you haven't heard his names by now, just make sure you visit his blog and read his article or articles. Last but not least, a series from Bob Cornelison, or SCOM Bob. As we all know him, it's a great series which also covers many aspects regarding cross-platform age discovery and installation. This was actually all the information regarding the Linux agent. Let's now jump to the SCOM management server. And as we once mentioned, Windows event logs. The first source I turn to whenever I have an issue. And what's important to say here is that it will help you a lot if you know how to filter and how to search event logs. So SCOM is very chatty. You might have really thousands of events. So just be familiar with filtering and searching, and then you can find any information that you need. Of course, as with the Windows agent, using the SCOM console for troubleshooting issues with the management server is very helpful. There are many views which are located under Monitoring Operations Manager, which might give you more information about what is going on with your management server. And another approach, another approach will be enabling diagnostic tracing or ETL tracing, which is more or like advanced troubleshooting technique, but it could save the day if you know how to read all the information in the ETL traces. And again, as with the Windows agent, using the workflow analyzer to troubleshoot SCOM workflows, whether on your management server or on your agent, is very important and very helpful also. So another troubleshooting technique I use very frequently is searching for different informations regarding my management servers directly in the database. And for that purpose, I always turn to this article of Kevin Holman's SCOM SQL queries, which actually contains a lot of, dozens of SQL queries, which you might use in order to get additional information for your troubleshooting. Just like an example, a large table query or database size and use space query. There are many more which you can use in order to get those additional pieces which you might need. And let's review now some common management server issues and their fixes. Database connectivity issues. Whenever your management server is not able to communicate with the database, the so-called or the famous warning 2115 is logged. And for this, there is a complete or very detailed guide on how to approach this particular issue. We will see it right away. Of course, service failures or crashes whenever your services, and we have 3 of them on the management server, are not stable. This can cause a lot of issues with your management server, of course. High CPU usage or memory leaks. This was a topic until, I would say, SCOM 2019, but in my opinion, the newest SCOM versions like 2022 and 2025, they do not have those problems like high CPU usage or memory leaks anymore. So I don't think that we should pay that much attention to this particular point. The next is very important, grayed out states. So if your management server is grayed out, what you can do is go to the famous System Center Operations Manager Troubleshooting Guide, and there you will find a complete step-by-step guide on how to approach this particular problem. So a couple of very useful links as usual. So this is the troubleshooting System Center SCOM troubleshooting guide on Microsoft Learn. So part of the official Microsoft documentation, very useful. Make sure you go over it if you are looking on how to solve your problems. And of course, Kevin Holman's blog contains a lot of very important information regarding troubleshooting. And last but not least, we already mentioned, this is Blake Drum's blog, or the collection of articles from his blog, which are actually focused on troubleshooting. So, so far we've covered the SCOM management server, or how to troubleshoot it. And now let's move to the SCOM gateway. It's not trivial that we can say turn to the Windows event logs for more information, but also make sure that the connectivity of your SCOM gateway to its primary management server is there. So port 5723 is very important so that the communication can happen. And of course, part of it is also you need to have a proper DNS resolution. There are also certain views within the SCOM console. Those are actually the same views which you might use also for the SCOM management server role. And there you can find also many different details in regards to issues with your SCOM gateway. So what are the common issues with the SCOM gateway? So as you already know, in many of the cases the SCOM gateway is installed with a certificate on it. It might be because it's not part of the same domain as the management server, or for other reasons, but the certificate troubleshooting is very, very important. So what you need to check here is actually that your certificates have the proper configuration, that their properties, like for example subject name, subject alternative name, or enhanced key usage, that they are set properly. And for that, what you can do is use the SCOM certificate checker script, again by Blake Drum. Thank you, Blake, for that. It's super helpful PowerShell script. I use it always. And we will see in a minute how the output of the script exactly looks like, and how it can help you with troubleshooting. Now, shortly, let's review some common certificate issues and solutions. What might happen is that we already mentioned this, that your certificate is not properly configured, that it does not have the right properties, but it also can be that you haven't imported your certificate for SCOM using the momcert import tool. It could also be that your certificate has expired, so you know what to do in such cases. Important to mention here is also that this certificate-based authentication, it has two endpoints, not only your SCOM gateway, but also your SCOM management server. So when you're doing troubleshooting, please don't forget to troubleshoot the certificate also on your management server, because it's a mutual authentication. And here, some best practices regarding gateway server maintenance. What I will encourage you to do is to monitor your certificates. There are management packs for that. You should know them. And of course, ensure that you have network connectivity and proper DNS resolution. Now, let's jump to the certificate checker script. We mentioned this, really awesome solution. The output of it looks like this. So in this particular case, you see that all the checks are green, but whenever your certificate fails a certain check, then the output will display it in red. So go ahead, download it, test it out. In case you suspect that you are having issues with your certificates, it will definitely solve your problem. And there is also one famous guide, again, part of Microsoft Learn, Troubleshoot Agent Connectivity Issues in Operations Manager. The reason why we mentioning this here in regards to the gateway is that the gateway is actually nothing else than an enhanced SCOM agent. So all the steps from this guide apply not only to the SCOM agent, but also to the SCOM gateway. So jumping next to the SCOM web console. What is important when doing troubleshooting of the SCOM web console? First of all, issues with authentication. And those issues are mainly there because of incorrect settings in IIS. So whenever you're troubleshooting the SCOM web console, you need to ensure that all the related or relevant authentication settings within IIS are properly configured. And for that, you can use the IIS manager to review all the settings. There are plenty of blogs and guides which depict on how IIS should be configured for the SCOM web console, and you just might compare your settings with the recommended settings. Another important point here, which is worth mentioning, is whenever your console is not installed on a management server, but it's installed on a normal regular server. In this case, there are certain specifics which need to be configured. First, of course, how the connectivity flows, so ports. But also, it's very important that you ensure that Kerberos constraint delegation is properly configured, and part of this configuration is actually properly configuring service principal names for that. What you might do in such cases, or the logs which you can use, are actually IIS logs, and there you can find plenty of information in regard to authentication issues, connectivity problems, or other types of unexpected behavior. So some general troubleshooting steps. What you can always do, or it's always a good idea to check the web config file for misconfigurations. Also ensure that ASP.NET version in IIS does match your web console's recommended version or requirements. What you can also do is verify the application pool configuration. This is also done in IIS. And recycle or restart the application pool associated with the web console. It's a common troubleshooting approach. What you also need to ensure, in case you have done any changes to the web console or actually in IIS, you need to ensure that you do an IIS reset, because your configuration won't be applied until you do that. Last but not least, ensuring that your web console is up to date, and actually this applies for all the components, is critical. So ensure that you have the latest update rollup installed on your web console. A couple of very helpful articles. As usual, Microsoft Learn is there with those two. The first one, HTTP 500 error, is complete guide of what you need to check in case your console is not installed on the management server. And what I find very, very helpful is this article or this blog post by Kevin Justin, which exactly explains how the whole authentication stuff and authorization happens behind the scenes for SCOM and IIS. And now we are jumping to the FAT console. And here again, it's not a surprise, checking event logs. The first thing I would do, and let's review some common issues and troubleshooting steps. So issues with the cache of the SCOM console is something most probably everyone has came across. What you need to do here is empty the console cache, and in most of the cases this will solve your problem. Important to mention here that the SCOM console actually connects to the database with the help of the SDK service, or the SDK service does the communication between your database and your console. So ensuring that your SDK service is running properly is very, very important. Ensuring that the service account has all the permissions needed is also very important. And if you're not able to find out what is going on, you can use different techniques like ETL tracing, this we already mentioned briefly, or different tools like Process Monitor in order to troubleshoot in case you have problems with the permissions of the service account which runs the SDK service. And last, what is worth mentioning here are TLS configurations. So in case you have TLS misconfigurations, one of the common symptoms is that your SCOM console does not start and it displays a certain error message. So you need always to ensure that the TLS configuration is properly set. And there is also a Microsoft guide for that which depicts how the TLS settings need to be set both on OS and also application level. Of course, there are also certain tools which you might use in order to verify or to test your TLS configuration. So, a couple of other issues, connectivity issues. So, the SCOM console uses port 5724 to connect to the SDK service on a management server. So, if you are doing a remote connection, you need to ensure that this port is open. And of course, DNS resolution has to be working properly in order for this to happen. Important point is also permissions. Not only the user which launches or the user which launches the SDK service has to have the proper permission, but also the user which tries to open the console needs to have permissions in SCOM in order for the console to be opened. And as with all components, it's important that you ensure that you have the latest update rollup. That's the first thing. And that you check regularly for known issues and make sure you have the latest patches installed in order to avoid them. A couple of links which are worth mentioning here is the first one depicts an issue with the SDK service. Very helpful. I think I had this particular issue on a couple of occasions, and also the one we already mentioned, how to implement TLS 1.2. One other important article is the security account matrix for the different SCOM versions. This is posted by Kevin Holman. And why this is important? Because it contains a matrix and it looks like this. And what we will see here are the minimum set of permissions for each row and also for each SCOM account that you have in your environment. So now we are finished with the SCOM console, and let's go to the SCOM reporting services. So as you all know, the SCOM reporting services are actually based on SQL reporting services and also SCOM reporting. So here, Windows event logs, not only Operations Manager, but because of the SQL reporting, the application log might contain interesting events, especially after we restart the service. So this is always a good idea to restart the service and check what is in the log there. And of course, what you can also do is check the report server configuration file and ensure that the URL of your reporting server can be opened and actually displays the proper information. There is one more specific here. In order for your reporting server to get the list of all the management packs, so that or all the reports actually, there is a certain configuration which needs to be done on your reporting server. So adding this allowed resource extensions for upload setting, there is an article for this, we will see it right away, is actually since SCOM 2022, I think almost for each, it's necessary for each installation of SCOM reporting services. Very important is also ensuring that the data warehouse data source is correct. I had this on many occasions where for some reason the data warehouse data source broke or wasn't there at all. So I had to recreate it. So whenever you have issues with the SCOM reporting services, always check your data source. And also what you need to ensure is that all related ports are open, because there is certain communication flow between your reporting server, your data warehouse, and your management server. And for that, there is also, of course, an article which depicts the exact ports which needs to be open. So, last point here, permissions. Of course, the SCOM service account, which runs the reporting services, needs to have the proper permissions. But also you need to ensure that the user which tries to generate reports also has the proper permissions. And here are the links which are worth mentioning in regards to troubleshooting the reporting services. The first one, Operations Manager reports fail to deploy, is actually what we previously mentioned with those extensions which need to be allowed on your reporting server in order for the management packs to be transferred to your reporting server. And the second one, configure a firewall for Operations Manager, Everyone should know this. It contains all the ports for all SCOM components and all the directions which you need to consider opening. So, last slide for today's session is actually focusing on some general tips regarding SCOM troubleshooting. What I do also on every occasion is I turn to the blogs of Kevin Holman, Blake Drum, Bob Cornelison. There are many more names which are actually worth mentioning here. There are plenty of resources and blog posts on troubleshooting SCOM where you can find on your problem or also guidance on how to solve it. An important part, and I will encourage you to do this, if you have an issue, post your question on Microsoft Q&A, particularly in the Operations Manager section. I also reply there from time to time, and I find it very useful. You find many useful hints there, and also solutions maybe. And the same applies also for the Reddit SCOM forums. I think Kevin Holman is very active there, so also you can post your question there. Of course, Googling or searching for your issues in internet is always a good idea. Just take your exception or your error message, Google it, search for it. There are so many sources of information for SCOM that I think 99% of the cases you will find a clue on what to check or how to approach your problem. And of course, the last point for today, we already mentioned this briefly. If you have issues with the deployment of SCOM, or meaning with the installation of the different roles, what you need to do is you need to turn to the installation logs. You just need to find where they are located, open them, see where the error or the exception is, search for it, and in the most cases you will find your solution. And with this, we will end today's presentation. I hope you find it useful. Thank you for your attention and also for attending SCOMathon 2025. I hope you have a great day and a very interesting session throughout the day. Thank you once again.